It's the Security Weekly News, and it's episode 407. 407. It's Friday, the 16th of August. I'm Doug White. Welcome aboard. We've got quantum AI killer drones, Ransomhub, Pixel, not my cat, Mad Liberator, the return of Russ Beauchemin from the great beyond, he regenerated, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, and ensures 24/7, 365.25 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respected compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker.
On Business Security Weekly, each week we address the challenges facing CISOs through our guest interviews, including former and active CISOs. Our news segment is focused on leadership and communications to better help security leaders translate and communicate security risks into business risks. Jason Albuquerque, Ben Carr, Tyler Robinson, and others add their expertise to the conversation. I'm Matt Alderman, and I hope you search for Business Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher and subscribe to download our latest content.
All right, from exile on the island of Elba, it's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White. Hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment, or summer will end, and it will be eternal winter. Wait, I like winter, but hit the button anyway. Either way, hit the button. Yeah, whatever. All right. So Ransomhub has been deploying a new malware that can disable endpoint detection and response, although I guess it could do whatever it wanted if it was, had admin privileges. Now, this one, they're calling it EDR Kill Shifter, which is from the big book of bad names or something like that. And but it's very interesting how it works. So what they do is they deploy a legitimate driver. So it's an actual signed driver on the targeted device. Okay, so what? But that legitimate driver has a known vulnerability in it. So they go get an old driver, they copy it, and they recompile it, and they basically use a legitimate driver that has a known vulnerability. So then they can exploit the vulnerability, then they can escalate privilege, they can disable your security and take control of your system. Sophos said that they've been seeing this approach among ransomware gangs and state-backed hacking groups lately. And they also said that they found a version of EDR Kill Shifter which can deliver all sorts of different payloads depending on the needs of the attackers, and that it was likely compiled with Russian localization. Imagine that. But basically, if it runs, that vulnerable driver gets installed, and then you basically have a vulnerability on your system, but it may not be detected since it's a legitimate driver. So Sophos said that both of the variants that they've seen exploit legitimate drivers using proof of concept exploits from GitHub. They said the attacker copied portions of the proof of concepts, modded them, and then ported all the code into Go. So Sophos recommends that you enable tamper protection and endpoint security, prevent local users from having admin privileges, and ensure systems are updated regularly because a lot of those old drivers may have been decertified. Google plans to release a firmware update for some Pixel phones since a report came out that the phones have an Android package that can be exploited to install malware. iVerify disclosed all this in their analysis of a package called showcase.apk yesterday, and they were working with Trailabits and Palantir. I don't know how you say that. Sorry, everybody. The APK had been flagged by their endpoint detection and response solution on an Android device that was running at Palantir. So they found that back in May, and along with software that runs system-like privileges and retrieves a config file when it runs from a single domain on HTTP, not HTTPS. So kind of that clear kind of 1990s flavor internet stuff. So yeah, that would be bad. They said that the APK is on a large percentage of Pixel devices that were sold since 2017, and that the package may be found on other Android models, and that Google has indicated this is true. Google did say, however, that the APK is not present on Pixel 9 series devices, and that they plan to remove the package from all supported devices in their markets in an upcoming software update. They went on and said that this is an APK developed by Smith Micro for Verizon in-store demo devices. So it's like something that was installed on the phones, for just so Verizon could, show how they work in the store, but it got left on there. And it's no longer being used, and that exploitation of the app on the phone requires both physical access to the device and the user's password, and they've seen no evidence of any active exploitation. I mean, it sounds pretty difficult. So it was probably a cool headline, that, oh no, but in reality, it's more of a, you've got to have physical access. You've got to have the user's password. It's really, the only way you could really exploit this was with some kind of super sexy man in the middle kind of attack. They used to love to talk about that in security classes, that man in the middle attack. It was like steganography. Everybody got all worked up about it, but it's pretty difficult to actually do in practice. So it's still better not to have vulnerable, unneeded software in your devices. And it's definitely better not to have any kind of vulnerable firmware stuff, but you can't remove this without a firmware update. So you will just have to wait until it's removed. There is a lot more detail about this attack and the potential of this attack in the article if you're interested in such things. Remember when quantum was the buzzword? Pepperidge Farm remembers. But now the buzzword's AI. Quantum used to be this big thing and everything said quantum, and you bought a router and it said quantum enabled and on and on and on. Well, regardless of what's hot and what's not in buzzwords, quantum is still a thing. And it was always a thing, even though it sort of started to get that marketing feel to it after a while. Like, is it really quantum, or is that just the name of the product? Like quantum Kool-Aid, is not necessarily quantum enabled Kool-Aid. It's just Kool-Aid that they named quantum flavor. But like those fat-free products they used to sell, where they were like, it's not actually fat-free. They just named it fat-free potato chips is the name of the product. And yeah, that kind of stuff. Anyway, remember when they said quantum was going to break all your encryption really, really fast, and all that old stuff would be swept away in a tidal wave of raw sewage and rotting meat? Yeah, that one. Well, we seem to have kind of forgotten about it. I mean, you don't see a lot of headlines about that, since mostly what we worry about now is AI behaving badly and ending all humanity in a wave of raw sewage and rotting meat. But, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is called NIST in the United States, did not forget about this. And they released 3 new standards this week, which include algorithms for signatures and encryption in the post-quantum world, which is called PQC, post-quantum encryption. Or post-quantum cryptography, sorry. The NIST public key crypto standards are what we use on the internet so that it can function, right? And all these things can be broken if quantum becomes everyday life, which it will. And as quantum continues to come online, it's going to become more and more of a problem. More qubits, it's going to be a field day with the media. We'll see this again, right? It's going to be a new thing. But quantum AI enabled toasters, why warm your bread with the old fashioned binary toaster when our new AI quantum toaster has more qubits and your toast will be Q perfect every time? Of course, unless the quantum AI toaster maybe decides it's smarter than you. And that, we all know how that goes. But anyway, the PQC report is the product of 8 years of development of these standards. And they had a contest for who would come up with the best crypto algorithms and all this kind of stuff. Now, currently, quantum computers are gigantic, expensive, difficult, quirky, all those things that regular computers were until they weren't. But if you're supporting high-risk environments, it may be time, or even if you're not, it may be time to start your own pre-studies on how you will move away from the encryption and crypto that you use currently for whatever you're doing to something new. NIST recommends that you assess and inventory all crypto assets now, that you develop a PQC transition plan, engage in some research and testing, and develop a data strategy with priority 1 data first, being all the data that needs to remain private for several years. They're just literally saying several years now in this. So it's no longer in the distant future. It's literally several years. Right. No flying cars yet, although we have a story about that too. But now's the time to start doing all those processes before in 3 years from now, which might be several, and they're selling Apple QEs down at Radio Nest for $1,000, and every kid on the block has one except you, and you have to use your uncle's old Commodore Q64 to write code. Yeah, I'm not bitter, but I mean, that day is coming. So start checking that out now before you're in a 3-year budget process, and 3 years is going to be well after everybody has quantum. Palo Alto Unit 42 found that a lot of open source GitHub projects were exposing secrets, which could allow a workflow injection in your processes. I mean, this is one of those issues with open source, to me, although, what is the opposite of open source? Closed source? Compiled? I don't know. Anyway, if there are things like embedded tokens, or worse, embedded keys or static keys and all these kind of things that we find in source code, well, those tokens can be exploited to do all sorts of things. The report was mostly talking about publicly available artifact files on open source repositories, of course, like GitHub. So if people fork the repository and they reuse it, even if they are, even if it's in the instructions, change these things, they probably won't. They'll just fork it and run with it, or they'll download it and put it in their app and it'll be there. Also, GitHub is putting some tokens in this stuff too, right? I mean, so there's things there. So this study had a lot of details about how artifacts published on publicly available open source repositories, including projects from Google and Microsoft and Red Hat and all these other big companies, frequently contain both working tokens for external cloud services that they're providing and 2 types of GitHub tokens. Now, some of these tokens are stored for 90 days on GitHub, which means that means somebody could access this stuff. Some of them are for much less time, like 6 hours. There's some JSON tokens and things that only last for like 6 hours, but it's a big issue, even if it's just 6 hours. I mean, we're dealing with nation states some of the time, right? I mean, not just like some 12-year-old kid, although they may be more effective than a nation state. Well, Palo Alto has created an open source action that automatically blocks the upload of artifacts that may contain secrets if you're using Palo Alto. Obviously, hint, hint. Not that I'm hinting, but they're hinting in their article. And there's links to other articles in this site if you're building site projects, and you may be building them whether you know it or not. So check with your developers and all your other people, because for all you know, you've got people all over your company that are putting stuff on GitHub. I mean, I got caught doing that at a different company, and they were like, "You're not allowed to do that." And I was like, "Oh, really? I didn't see a sign or anything, so I've been doing it." They're like, "Yeah, don't do that. Take it all down right now." I'm like, "Okay, sure." Check it out. Mad Liberator is a new extortion crew, which this is very interesting. They use technically remote access tools or possibly social engineering, but it's not clear what they're using. It's not even clear if it's real. Anyway, according to this article, they use AnyDesk. Now, I used to use LogMeIn to manage my dad's home computer when he got really, really old. I mean, my dad, he was a professional. But he got old, and he started getting kind of squirrely about, and of course, all this paranoia led to him getting even squirrelier, because I was telling him, "Don't click anything, Dad." And then he would literally calling me like 3 times a day going, "I got an email from my friend Steve. Should I click it?" And I'm like, "No, Dad, don't click it." And then but anyway, I started using LogMeIn to check this stuff when he got pop-up messages or just about anything, because he would get all sort of frantic about it. And it's really, really easy to install LogMeIn and AnyDesk. And getting somebody to do it over the phone is also easy. You can literally walk them right through it. I did it with my dad, and he had like, tech block or something. He was like a accountant. He ran this whole big corporate thing, but I mean, he had really bad tech block, but I was able to walk him right through it, and we had it installed in a second. And, it was really secure. It was encrypted. It was really hard to get into unless the other person was cooperating with you. Now, if my dad's sitting there clicking, and I was worried about it, so I had it very restricted. It was like static IP to static IP. It was very, very restricted because I was worried somebody, would be able to get into it. But nobody ever did. Now, it's not clear what Mad Liberator's doing. It just seems that they mostly operate a leak/shame site for victims, and they claim that stolen info can be downloaded from there. Now, it's always a good time to think about your employees either getting, exfiltrated or shamed somehow. I mean, remember the old scam about, "I saw what you were doing on your webcam last week. If you don't cooperate with us and install this malware in your company." That was going on. And apparently people were using their webcams for other purposes than what I use my webcam for, which is really, really boring. Because if somebody said, "I saw what you were doing on your webcam last week," I'd be like, "Oh, really? Yeah. You watch the news?" Because I'm just sitting right here all the time. But uh, think about this in your family members and how they can get exploited by this kind of stuff. And you might want to try to set up something to, either block this or manage it. My dad and I had a code word. I just told him, like, look, if somebody calls you and says they're representing me or anybody else and they don't have his code word, and nobody knew that code word except my dad, and I don't remember what it was anymore. I had to write it down, and I had one for Lou too, my friend Lou, and he I was worried about him as well. But if someone called him, we'll use a code word. Now, AnyDesk sets up a 10-digit code that's used for remote access to the device, and basically once the access is granted, they own the system. They're admin. You can set it up better, but people don't. And, tech support uses this all the time. But in this case, they don't really know how Mad Liberator is targeting the machines. They said, is it random? I mean, there's more than 10 billion possible numbers in that system, but I mean, that's not that many really. But the report said they had no indication that someone was targeted through social engineering. So it's not really clear what they're doing. But you might want to think about this and your employees and your family members getting blackmailed and targeted by this kind of stuff, because that could be bad, as they say. Well, worms are always scary ever since Mr. Morris set one loose back in 1988, and they're still pretty scary. A vulnerability in Microsoft says, quote, an unauthenticated attacker could repeatedly send IPv6 packets that include specially crafted packets to a Windows machine, which could enable remote code execution. That sounds pretty wormy. Like that raccoon you ran over last week. But the vulnerability has a 9.8 CVSS score. So obviously Microsoft thinks it's pretty wormy sounding too. Cyber Kunlun said that they discovered this several months ago and pushed Windows users to deploy the available patches or disable IPv6 as attempt mitigation. If you're not using IPv6, disable it anyway. Why have multiple stacks running if you're only using IPv4? Microsoft enables both stacks now. If you don't know that, they turn on IPv4 and IPv6, and they use IPv6 if it's available. And you may not want to turn it off, or you may want to experiment with it. I'm not saying to turn it off if you use it. I'm just saying if you have unused stuff, turn it off. But this was patched on Tuesday, so this week, and they covered 6 other 0 days that were being actively exploited in the wild. So patch up you Windows while you may. Sorry, Robert Herrick. Yeah, although you were kind of creepy, but nevertheless. This last one here is a Pop article about stolen Social Security numbers. So there was a lot of stuff lately about a massive Social Security number exfiltration. But, this was a lot of headlines and a lot of Pop headlines and a lot of Pop publications. And, headlines lead to fear. Fear leads to the dark side. And, well, the dark side leads to social engineering. But apparently an attack on a background check company results, according to all this, billions and billions, sorry, Carl Sagan, stolen Social Security numbers. Now, this number, if you don't know what a Social Security number is, in the United States, they give you this number when you're born, basically, and you can pay into this fund for the rest of your life. And supposedly it's going to provide you with some kind of retirement checks when you get to certain ages. Since they got rid of pensions in the 1980s and traded them for savings accounts that you can put money into. But good luck getting all that money back out. But regardless, most Americans have one of these numbers, and it used to be used for just about everything. It was so common that a lot of people had these printed on their bank drafts or checks because they had to put that on there when they wrote them anyway. I remember being in college and they wanted you to put your Social Security number on everything and your driver's license number. So most people just got those pre-printed on their checks. The doctor's office always made you write your Social Security number down. But the data in question appeared back in April in some forums and contained millions of rows of data, some of which apparently are authentic, some of which it's not so clear. It's not totally clear if this is real. They were trying to sell this, so it could be, inflated, who knows what. But basically, the article contains a bunch of sound advice for end users about what you might want to do if you're worried about this kind of stuff. Things like freezing your credit, using multi-factor authentication, dark web monitoring, and all this kind of stuff are kind of explained in this in general end user speak, password hygiene, and so forth. So you might want to distribute. Now, for most of us, this stuff seems natural, but I'll be honest, you should review. because we all get sloppy and we all have employees and family members that may be exploited by social engineering because they see these headlines, they immediately start calling people, and those scare headlines make people very vulnerable to social engineering, especially when they don't understand it. Hi, my name's Ted. I think your social security number is being used to traffic cats across the border. If I could just install AnyDesk on your system, ma'am, I'll be happy to help you clean it right up. And there you go. I mean, my grandmother was stone deaf. So when she got those calls, she just started talking about her day. And if you wanted to call her, you could call her whenever, and she'd talk to you. She didn't know who you were. She couldn't hear what you said, but she'd just tell you about her day. She had a sort of spiel. It was pretty interesting. After a while, she would hang up, and then you're like, bye. But she didn't have a computer, so it wasn't a big deal. But she'd have a really big stick, so when people rang the doorbell, yeah, she could use that freely to disperse them. It's a good article to distribute. All right. Well, it has been a long time since we've had our old friend Russ on the show, but I asked him to come back today because Aaron is off cavorting somewhere, as he often is. So please welcome back to the show, Russ Beauchemin. Hi, Russ.
Hey, Doug. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, great. So for those of you that have seen me on this show or our other show, Secure Digital Life, before in syndication, we, I like to talk about future stuff, future tech, robots, sci-fi, whatever. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about futurism for sure, but as it relates to ethics and specific ethics surrounding personal security, privacy, and more appropriately, consumers' rights as they relate to the ability to pursue legal action against a company for something like wrongful death. I mean, I'm pretty sure we can all agree that the worst possible unwanted outcome of a situation is loss of life, right? So I chose this topic also because there is, this week I saw a case that we're going to talk about in a little bit, which seems to blow my mind and as being completely unethical. But actually, the more I researched it and delved into the interesting topics or subtopics about it, there's a lot more to it than just that. All right. So before we get into specifics, I want to do a little bit of a thought experiment. Okay. So I want you to imagine, all viewers, friends, Doug, imagine you and your significant other sign up for a popular video streaming service that we're going to call Schmizny Plus. Okay. So when you sign up for this particular streaming service, as with other streaming services, it's not unique to Schmizny Plus. You're required to agree to, I would suggest read also, but you're required to agree to their particular 33-page subscriber agreement in order to use their service. Like I said, it's the case with most things nowadays, right? You read either the terms of service or the subscriber agreement, or you don't read them. But in order to use their service, you have to click on the box that says, I agree. So let's unpack that a little bit, okay? I know that I don't read them, but for the sake of this thought experiment, I want to call out a specific clause in Schmizny Plus's agreement related to what's called binding arbitration, class action waiver, and jury trial waiver. All right. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I have studied philosophy and ethics, over the course of my life. And I think this falls under that category. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. So let me read the quick and boring legalese here so that you have a foundation of where I'm coming from. So, and I quote in quotations, there may be instances in which disputes arise between you on the one hand and Schmizny Plus on the other hand, and you agree to resolve by binding individual arbitration all disputes, including any related disputes involving the Malt Schmizny parent company or its affiliates. Okay. And then they go on to say in the legalese, a dispute includes any claim, dispute, action, or other controversy, whether based on past, present, or future events. Keep that in the back of your mind for a minute. Whether based in contract, tort, statute, or common law, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to continue on with that. So a couple things I want you to remember there. The individual arbitration, okay, clause, and also the time frame based on past, present, or future events. All right. So those are two things that I want you to remember while I continue on with this stuff. So in a nutshell, it means that should you, the subscriber to Schmizny Plus, have any issue with Schmizny Plus, its parent company, Malt Schmizny, or any of its affiliates, named or unnamed, you waive your right to file class action lawsuit or have a jury trial. Instead, you, by signing this or agreeing to the terms, you agree to have all issues privately arbitrated between you and or your lawyer and Schmizny and or their lawyers in a closed private meeting or meetings. Now, this may not seem like a big deal for things like simple streaming services until it involves someone dying and their widow's rights to sue the company for wrongful death. And yes, you heard that correct. So let's unpack that even further. I'm sure you're asking yourself, how is the signing up for a simple popular streaming service and the untimely death of an individual related? And the answer lies in the legalese that I just read to you, specifically the part about agreeing to resolve by arbitration all disputes involving the Malt Schmizny company and its affiliates. Okay, let's go back to the thought experiment. So let's say that Schmizny Plus's parent company, which is Malt Schmizny, owns a popular theme park, and you decide you want to take your family there for a fun-filled vacation. Okay, so you book the tickets on a website, and you plan to have a wonderful time. However, the fates were not with you today. During your visit to one of the restaurants, which we're going to call Nalgar Road Irish Pub and Restaurant, which is located directly on the Malt Schmizny property, theme park property, while you're dining, your spouse suffers a fatal allergic reaction to a meal and dies. Yikes. Right? Not fun. So after grieving, and by the way, you'll find out in a few minutes, this really happened in 2019. And after grieving and dealing with all the other aspects of losing a spouse, you decide to sue the Malt Schmizny theme park for the and the restaurant associated with it for the wrongful death of your spouse in the hope of allowing a jury of your peers to decide if you should be entitled to some sort of remuneration for the untimely death of your spouse. However, Malt Schmizny claims because you signed up for their Schmizny Plus streaming service, and Malt Schmizny is the parent company of Schmizny Plus, you agreed to waive your right to have a jury trial and claim or dispute you have related to the untimely death of your spouse is settled in private between their lawyers and you or yours, even though the death of your spouse happened at the theme park and seemingly had nothing to do with the streaming service whatsoever. Okay? Now, that's the thought experiment, and, it actually happened, as I said, in 2019. And these types of clauses in these terms of service or customer agreement contracts are known as infinite arbitration clauses and are present in not just Schmizny Plus's software or platform, but many, many others that undoubtedly all of you have used in the past, various companies and whatnot. Okay, so this is not unique to Malt Schmizny. All right. So why is this a big deal? Well, the thought experiment presented above happened in real life, as I said, in 2019, in the court case, which has just come to light in the media, of Jeffrey Piccolo versus WDPR. And it's currently in legal dispute, probably for obvious reasons, based on how you're thinking, about it. In fact, the particular case will serve as a legal precedent for future cases related to infinite arbitration clauses in contracts, regardless of whether or not they result in loss of life. Although this one's particularly egregious because somebody died. So that's why I'm kind of harping on it. Although there are many others that came out during, over the past 10 years that have come out during the research that I did on this particular topic, but not many of them resulted in loss of life. So that's why I kind of chose this one. Plus, it just hit the media this week. So why should we care about infinite arbitration clauses? Well, aside from the tragic loss of life of a human and a wide range of ethical implications this could have related to future cases, many believe that arbitration favors the large-scale corporation and minimizes, if not completely mitigates, remuneration for the plaintiff, in this case, the widow of the spouse that passed away from the allergic reaction to the food. To be clear, there certainly are more moving parts to this case. It's only my intent to bring this up for ethical consideration and to help us think about what this could mean for the future of infinite arbitration clauses across megacorps like Malt Schmisny. Not, again, my background not being a lawyer, I just want to talk about this from an ethics standpoint. In an article posted on CNN.com, the author summarized the suit, quotes that the plaintiff's lawyer is preposterous. Malt Schmisny is explicitly seeking to bar its 150 Schmisny Plus subscribers from ever prosecuting a wrongful death case against it in front of a jury, even if the case facts have nothing to do with Schmisny Plus, which in this case they don't. They're just using the contract that they signed for signing up for the streaming service as a blanket or umbrella contract or agreement to allow for these for arbitration to happen at the Malt Schmisny theme park. Additionally, according to the article, the widower believes they only signed up for a month-long free streaming trial, as it appears he canceled the subscription before he was ever charged, which makes this even more of an important case because it would mean that if ruled in favor of the defendant, Malt Schmisny, even after the termination of the streaming service contract, the arbitration agreement would still persist, as it says in the above clause, whether based on past, present, or future events, and that the 150 plus million subscribers to Schmisny Plus would be held to the same outcome as this particular case, since this would become the legal precedent. So my question is whether or not this is ethical and downright dangerous. I mean, the loss of life is bad enough for sure, but there are also the issues related to whether or not the infinite arbitration clause in the free trial should persist, in the free trial of Schmisny Plus should persist should the consumer not wish to purchase the service, and just for how long after canceling a subscription with Schmisny Plus should the arbitration clause hold for its parent company and affiliates. As it's written right now, it lasts forever, which seems rather unethical to me, Doug. What about to you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I while you were talking, I looked up Yum Foods. It was just a company that I'm aware of because they own so many things, and I started thinking, there's companies out there that own so many things. I mean, they don't just own food; they own theme parks, they own movie theaters, they own who knows what they own. And there's more of them all the time. I mean, if you look at some of the giant corporate, conglomerates that own, I mean, like Schmismy, as you say, and I think it's okay. So there's this thing in Confucian law, and I love the Chinese people, but I'm not a fan of the Chinese government. But there is this thing in Confucian law that says that all laws should be understandable by everyone, not just by elite blue button mandarins at court. They should be understandable by a lowly peasant who's walking down the road. And the tax code of China is like a pamphlet. I brought one back one time, and they're available for free. And I brought one to my wife because my wife's a CPA. And I said, this is the tax code of China. And the U.S. tax code is like 5,000 volumes. So to me, we all click these things, but this starts to sound like, okay, we're going to give away a toy for free in a park, and all you have to do is click here and give us your email and click OK. And if that toy was owned by, let's just call it Giant Death Corp, and they own everything on earth. They own car lots, they own restaurants, they own theme parks, they own movie theaters. And in that 4,000 page legalese document that no one can probably understand without 2 or 3 attorneys on staff, I mean, I have to sign these things all the time, right? And you're with your kid, and your kid says, yeah, I just want this. It's free. And you click it and you go, okay. And then 2 years later, when, you're killed through some horrible negligence thing, they're going, oh, yeah, this has to be done in arbitration in our private court with our private attorneys. We'll have 36 of them present. Feel free to bring your own representation, and we'll see who wins. I think it starts to get pretty outrageous that these agreements that you click, that you don't know all the interlacing, I mean, when we subscribed to Disney Plus, I'm sure we agreed to this. You don't even think about, oh yeah, that includes the theme parks. If they didn't put bolts in the rides, sorry, you shouldn't have clicked this. Yeah, you shouldn't have accepted that. No, yeah. So yeah, I think it's very unethical. I think it's wrong. I think that companies, if the companies are going to hold you to these kind of standards, they should be required by law to provide you with a service agreement that is either completely understandable by anyone at a, say, 6th grade reading level, or they should have to provide you an attorney, available to you 24 hours a day so that they can tell you what the agreement you're signing means. Because I see these agreements all the time, whether it's a video game or it's pretty soon at a restaurant, to look at the menu, you're going to have to scan a QR code, and they'll probably have a service agreement that you have to click OK to just to order. And I'm not a fan.
But I also feel like there should be a statute of limitations on when or how long that infinite arbitration clause lasts after you opt out of the contract.
Or even if you don't opt out. I mean, how long should you be obligated? So you bought a ticket to go on a theme park, and you clicked OK on the agreement, which now applies to 35,000 other things. They may own the water supply company that's providing, service to your home. How long and how far should that agreement extend under some giant blanket corporation that you don't even know about and you aren't informed of? I mean, in the case of Disney, I'll say it, send your mice down here with ball bats. I'm not afraid. I have cats. But, basically, how far should that agreement extend? I mean, he agreed to this agreement for watching a television program, which didn't seem like a big threat.
Under a free trial.
Yeah, but then you go to a restaurant or you go to a theme park, and how far should these agreements extend? But, we know who makes the rules, and that's so. I don't know what to tell people. I mean, I don't know. I'm like, you can't function unless you agree to these stupid things. And I mean, I guess you could sit in a bomb shelter somewhere and with a lantern, although you probably can't even do that without clicking some kind of a service agreement. Bomb Shelter Inc. And they just happen to own the local swimming pool too. Sorry, too bad that the diving board was put back up and you broke your neck. You should never have agreed when you were buying those sodas last month. Yeah. Oops. I mean, to be fair, they did have an arbitration. We don't know exactly, but they're forcing this person into a private arbitration. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't get anything either. I mean, I have been involved in quite a number of arbitrations, and they were basically court without the court. So it was an attempt to reduce the cost and the time, because civil suits in court take anywhere from 7+ years to even be heard. So, arbitration can happen much quicker than that. So it's not necessarily a terrible thing, but it also can be a terrible thing. And I can't imagine. Go ahead.
I think people that are anti-arbitration, infinite arbitration agreements are more not so much focusing on incidents that result in loss of life, but more along incidents that result in action class style lawsuits, right, involving hundreds of thousands of people.
Of course.
So I think that's what they're focusing on for anti-arbitration. So,
well, it's a very interesting topic. We should do a whole show on it, because I think we could probably do a 2-hour show. But thank you, Russ. I appreciate you coming on. And the sky was filled with drones. I think that's coming soon. I do. I think not today, but pretty soon. In the UK, Civil Aviation Authority, or the CAA, has approved 6 new trials for the use of drones in deliveries, inspections, and emergency services, which includes one from Amazon. So most places currently limit drone operations to line of sight. So if you have a drone and you're flying it and you can't see the drone, even if you can see through the camera, that's verboten in the United States anyway. I don't know about the rules in England, but I think it's banned most everywhere. But this would allow, this new proposal pilot would allow them for flying beyond the visual line of sight, which would be necessary for many of these kind of services. I do think it's coming. I think Amazon wants to have drones start flying your packages to you, so you can just, the drone comes up to the window and hands you your package. I mean, and honestly, considering that some sketchy guy in a 30-year-old car with the headlights burned out, this really happened, tossed a package out of the passenger window into my lawn sprinklers last year in the middle of the night. It was like 11-something p.m. I saw it on the camera, and then drove off. And it wasn't even a package for my house. It was for my neighbors. And I took the sodden package over there to them the next day and went, I mean, it may be a big improvement to have an AI-enabled drone that goes, hello, sir, thank you. But, currently they're kind of noisy. And I was wondering, are people going to be out trying to capture them with nets? They got packages on them. So it's like a whole new porch bandit kind of thing. Sounds like Black Mirror, but I think there's already a show that involves something like that, or a video game or something. But anyway, I mean, if a drone could be used like an emergency rescue, that might be good. You know, like if you were skiing and you fell and they could just send drones out looking for you, that would be pretty cool. But I don't know, quantum AI enabled drones flying all over, what could go wrong, really? Anyway, that's the news. Thank you, Russ Beauchemin, for rejoining us. We'll have you back again soon, and I will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.